Hello and welcome to Sin and Steel, the heavy metal podcast. I'm your host, Sarah-Tonin, and this is my YouTube introductory episode. What is Sin and Steel? Where did it start? And where is it going? Join me as I summarise it all, and hopefully by the end of it, you'll be liking, subscribing, and following me along for the journey. So Sin and Steel started about a year ago now, with my first podcast episode airing in May 2023. I wanted to run a music and talk podcast where I could not only talk about heavy metal, but play some ripper tracks and actually share the music that I love so much. I wanted to create a space where people could come together through their love of heavy metal, no matter whether they had any technical or musical knowledge, no matter what type of heavy metal they liked, and just share the shit that I find interesting, show how diverse the genre and the scene is, make recommendations, and just share the passion. So I kicked it off with monthly main episode topics looking at things like heavy metal in video games, censorship, gig etiquette, the evolution of music sharing, and a whole bunch of other topics as well. Then I alternated bonus episodes of heavy metal trivia and artist spotlights where I'd focus on one particular band or artist. As the podcast grew, I got to a point last year where I actually started getting people to join me to have a chat about the different topics, and I had guests like the Gore Queen Cowley, Aussie artists Steve O'Brien from Aeons Abyss, Paula Damsel of Kuntsquad, and Andrew Hudson of Harlott. As well as American death metal legend Cowley of Massacre. After doing an end-of-year wrap-up with my top albums and EPs of 2023, I expanded on this in the new year and introduced a monthly What's New in Metal episode, where I now look at heavy metal news, new releases for the month, and those have been a lot of fun. So all this momentum had built up, my listeners were increasing, and I was making reach kind of all across the world. And I felt like I was really starting to get the hang of things. I was getting organised, I had plans out for the entire year, and then I got hit with news that kind of devastated me. Spotify announced some changes to their podcasting services, including the removal of the music and talk function. So, like anyone else whose format relies on that function, I've had to reassess what I'm doing, and I didn't want to just shift back to a talk-only podcast. As is probably evident by me doing this episode, and you'll already know if you're following me along on social media, I've decided that the next step is to have a go at YouTube. And I say have a go because I won't know if I like it or not and what's realistic for me to do until I give it a proper go. So I'm just jumping in and getting things moving. I'd love to continue the What's New in Metal episodes each month, and then outside of this I have a bunch of ideas floating around this brain just waiting to get out. It would be awesome to be able to do regular episodes dedicated to Aussie metal, as well as exploring the larger topics that I always have, doing them almost like little docos. I really want to go all in. But to start with, I'm throwing my original schedules in the bin, and I'm not committing to any specific number of videos or release dates as yet, because fuck knows I'm going to have to take some time to adjust and then learn a bunch of new skills like video editing and lighting and whatever the fuck else I need to know to be able to do this well. So you'll have to watch this space to see exactly what comes next, but what I'm currently thinking is that I'll try to do those What's New in Metal episodes each month, and then as I can, I'll do some smaller, kind of simple, maybe a little bit silly topic type episodes just to begin with, just to give me something to practice with. And then once I get the hang of a few things, I'll have a better idea of what I can do and how I can bring those big topics back in realistically. Until the music and talk feature is completely removed in June, I might take advantage of this and do a few more mini episodes, but as an alternative, I will keep uploading the audio from these videos to Spotify for the podcast listeners who don't want the visuals. I'm just not entirely sure how well that's going to translate yet. As for me, well, I did a bit of an intro in the original first episode of the podcast if you want to go back and check that out on Spotify, but my name is Sarah-Tonin. I'm based in the beautiful Bass Coast of Victoria, Australia, where I'm surrounded by beach and bush. And I'm not a musician or anything like that, unless you want to count some really bad karaoke. Anyway, I'm just a fan of the music. By day, I'm a workplace health and safety professional working in manufacturing, and outside of that, I'm a nerdy weirdo who likes video games, board games, Dungeons and Dragons, books, and all things creative, whether it be painting, drawing, sculpting, or taking my camera out to get some cool photos. I've grown up around music with a dad who plays guitar. In my late teens, I worked for JB Hi-Fi in the music section, and I volunteered with the Soundwave Street team where I would hand out flyers at gigs or put wristbands on people at festivals in exchange for free entry. And the podcast has been a new way for me to keep that passion going and bring in a creative element. I can be a bit of an oversharer anyway, so I'm sure you'll learn plenty about me as we go. But for now, I guess that kind of covers where my brain is at. So if you followed me here from the existing podcast or are listening to the audio across on Spotify right now, thank you. I really appreciate all the support and encouragement that I've received so far, and I hope that you'll stick around through the awkward format changes, and if you haven't already, consider jumping across here to YouTube. If you're new to Sin and Steel, please consider going over to Spotify to check out the original episodes for a better idea of what Sin and Steel is all about, and otherwise, welcome to the Madhouse. Either way, old or new, please subscribe to and share the show, and make sure to follow Sin and Steel on social media. Thanks for checking out this episode of Sin and Steel. I'm your host, Sarah-Tonin, and sinners, until next time, stay metal.